They thought $500 could bury me. They were wrong. I didn't need to shout, didn't need to slam doors. I just needed to open my terminal, review the terms they'd never bothered to read. And then their $500 turned into $12 million, vanishing from the company accounts. A fitting price to teach them the value of what they'd thrown away. My name is Nina Ward. For 8 years, I was the ghost in Argentum Dynamics machine. The systems engineer who kept their infrastructure breathing through 3 CTOs, 2 acquisitions, and countless pivots. I wasn't the type to give keynotes or appear in company photos. I was the one they called at 3 a.m. when production went down. The one who could trace a memory leak through 7 microservices without breaking a sweat. I liked it that way. Let others chase visibility. I chased up time. The morning everything changed started like any other. October rain hammered against the windows of our Seattle office as I nursed my 3rd coffee, reviewing logs from the overnight batch processes. Everything green, as always. My code might not win beauty contests, but it ran like clockwork. Nina, got a minute? I looked up to find Logan Prince standing by my desk, that practiced smile plastered across his face. Our new CTO, 6 weeks into his reign of terror. Harvard MBA, 0 engineering background, hired to modernize our technical operations, according to the all-hands email that made half the senior engineers update their LinkedIn profiles. Sure, I said, locking my screen. He didn't sit. Move number 1 from whatever management book he'd memorized. I've been reviewing our code base. Your work is ... interesting. Interesting. In 20 years of engineering, I'd learned that word meant trouble. The systems are stable, I said. Uptime's at 99.97% this quarter. Stability isn't everything. He shifted his weight, designer shoes squeaking against the floor. Your code is difficult for the team to maintain. All these custom libraries, the unconventional patterns. We need to think about technical debt. Technical debt. The phrase every non-technical executive learned to weaponize. I'd heard it from his predecessors too, right before they discovered my debt-ridden. Code was the only thing standing between the company and complete infrastructure collapse. Which components specifically concern you? I kept my voice neutral, professional. All of it, frankly. That's not why I'm here. He pulled out his phone, swiped to something. There's a more immediate issue. This purchase from last month. $500 for a software license, personal credit card, no approval. My stomach tightened. The monitoring tool. I'd bought it myself when procurement dragged their feet for 6 weeks. Integrated it into our alerting system. It had already prevented 2 potential outages. I submitted the expense report, I said. It's pending reimbursement. Not anymore. His smile widened. Using personal funds for company software is a serious violation. Circumventing procurement processes, potential security risks, financial impropriety. It's a monitoring tool. We needed it. Procurement doesn't matter. He pocketed his phone. I'm afraid this is grounds for immediate termination. Security will escort you out. Your personal items will be mailed. The words hung in the air, like smoke. 8 years. And it came down to this. Not performance, not actual misconduct. $500 and a new CTO's need to mark territory. The reimbursement? I asked, though I already knew. Denied. You made an unauthorized purchase. That's on. You. I stood slowly, gathered my coffee mug, my notebook, muscle memory more than conscious thought. Around us, the morning bustle continued. Keyboards clacking, someone laughing at the coffee machine. None of them knew they were watching an execution. Your badge and laptop, Logan said, holding out his hand. I unclipped the badge from my belt, set it on the desk, pulled my laptop from the dock, handed it over. Every movement precise, controlled. Inside, something cold and calculating had already begun to spin up, like a demon process in the background. Anything else? I asked. He was already turning away. Security will meet you at the elevator. I walked to my desk one last time. Picked up the plant I'd kept alive through 3 office moves, a small, succulent, hardy, and patient like me. Nina Terra from the legal team was passing by, coffee in hand. Everything okay? Just leaving? I said. She frowned, confused, but I was already moving. The security guard, obviously uncomfortable, appeared at my elbow. Young guy, probably making $15 an hour to escort out someone who'd been here before he finished high school. Sorry about this, he muttered as we walked. Not your fault. The elevator ride stretched eternal 23 floors of silence, watching the numbers descend. By the time we reached the lobby, that cold calculation had crystallized into something harder. They thought $500 was worth throwing away 8 years of institutional knowledge. They had no idea what they had just purchased. Outside, Seattle's rain had softened to mist. I stood on the sidewalk, plant tucked under my arm, and pulled out my phone. Scrolled through contacts until I found the name I needed. Tara Chen, different Tara, my law school friend who'd specialized in intellectual property. Hey, stranger, she answered on the second ring. Long time, got time for coffee? I asked. I need to discuss some licensing issues. Sounds serious. Everything okay? I looked back at Argentum's glass tower, its logo gleaming despite the gray day. It will be. The coffee shop Tara suggested was one of those aggressively hip places with exposed brick and furniture that looked salvaged from a defunct factory. She was already there when I arrived, sharp as ever in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. You look like someone kicked your dog, she said as I sat down. Close. Got fired this morning. Her eyebrows shot up. Argentum finally imploded. New CTO decided to make an example over a $500 expense report. Jesus. After how long? Years, she whistled low. Wrongful termination? At will state. They can fire me for wearing the wrong color socks if they want. I wrapped my hands around the coffee cup, absorbing its warmth. But that's not why I called you. I pulled out my personal laptop, logged into my GitHub account, pulled up repository after repository, each time-stamped, each with carefully documented commit histories. These are libraries I developed, I said on my own time, my own equipment. Integrated them into Argentum systems over the years because they needed solutions and I could provide them. Tara leaned forward, scanning the licenses. Duh. MIT license on this one. GPL here. Wait, she stopped at one particular repo. This is your custom license. Drafted it myself 3 years ago. Free for personal use, requires commercial licensing. For any for-profit entity. Argentum's been using these in production across their entire infrastructure. I pulled up another tab. I've been meticulous about tracking usage. Every API call, every build process that pulls from my repos. Tara sat back, a slow smile spreading across her face. You beautiful paranoid genius. You've been planning for this. Not planning, just preparing. I learned early that companies love using your work but hate paying for it. So I made sure the terms were clear, even if no one bothered reading them. How much are we talking about? I showed her my calculations, usage metrics, server instances, build processes. 3 years of commercial use across dozens of systems, conservative estimate, $2.4 million in licensing fees. She nearly choked on her coffee. That's not conservative by any definition. It is when you consider the damage if I revoke their license. Every system running my code would need to be rewritten or shut down, which they can't do because you're the only one who understands it. Oh, they understand it fine, they just can't replicate it. There's a difference. Tara studied me over her cup. This is about more than money. The money is just how we keep score. This is about 8 years of 3 a.m. calls of holding there. Systems together with digital duct tape and prayer. Of being invisible until something breaks, then being essential until it's fixed. And now, they've made you visible. Their mistake. She pulled out her tablet, started taking notes. Okay, first step is documenting everything. Every commit, every integration point, every time they pulled from your repos, already done. I slid a USB drive across the table. Logs going back. 3 years, commit histories, CI/CD pipelines, even their internal Slack messages discussing implementation.
Ow!
Did you? I built their logging system. I know where every byte of data lives. She pocketed the drive. This is going to be fun. But Nina, you know, once we send this, there's no going back. You'll be burning every bridge. They lit the match when they walked me out over $500. I'm just choosing where the fire spreads. We spent the next 2 hours mapping strategy. Tara would review everything, ensure our legal position was ironclad. I'd monitor their systems from the outside, tracking continued usage. We'd give them time to realize what they'd lost before making our move. "How long do you want to wait?" she asked as we prepared to leave. "Long enough for it to hurt, for them to feel the absence before they understand the cost. That's cold. It's business. They taught me that this morning." I left the coffee shop and drove home through Seattle's perpetual drizzle. My apartment felt strange at 2 p.m. on a Tuesday. It's quiet to still. I set my salvage succulent on the windowsill and opened my laptop. A force of habit made me check our Genum status page first. All green lights, systems humming, my code doing its job, even as HR processed my termination. The irony wasn't lost on me, but I knew those green lights wouldn't last. Logan Prince had no idea what he'd inherited, no understanding of the Jenga tower of interdependencies I'd spent 8 years building and maintaining. He saw messy code where I saw evolved solutions, technical debt where I saw battle-tested reliability. He'd learn. I pulled up my monitoring dashboard. The one running on personal infrastructure Argentum didn't even know existed. Hooks I'd built into the open-source libraries. Nothing malicious, just telemetry. Usage, statistics, error rates, performance. Metrics. Everything a responsible maintainer needed to support their code. Within hours, I saw the first signs. A junior developer pushing a cleanup commit, removing what they thought were redundant error handlers. Logan's influence? No doubt. Clean code over functional code. The error rate spiked immediately. Not enough to trigger alarms, but enough that I noticed they'd introduced a race condition that would manifest under load. Give it a week, maybe 2, and they'd have their first real outage. I closed the laptop and made dinner. Salmon, asparagus, a glass of wine. Ate alone at my kitchen counter, watching the city lights blur through rain-streaked windows. My phone buzzed occasionally. Former colleagues reaching out, having heard the news. I let them go to voicemail. That night, I slept better than I had in years. No on-call responsibilities, no anxiety about overnight batch jobs. Just the quiet satisfaction of knowing that somewhere across the city in Argentum's gleaming tower, my absence was already beginning to cost them. They thought they were saving $500. They had no idea what they were about to pay. The first 2 weeks passed in strange tranquility. I established new routines, morning runs without checking production alerts, coffee without the accompanying dread of emergency Slack messages. I even took a pottery class, something I'd been meaning to do for years, but I never stopped watching. My monitoring dashboard became a dark entertainment, a systems-level soap opera playing out in real time. The junior developers, emboldened by Logan's mandate to modernize, continued their refactoring crusade. They renamed variables for clarity, restructured modules for elegance, deleted commented code they deemed unnecessary. Every change was a small cut, individually harmless, collectively catastrophic. The first real incident hit on a Thursday afternoon. I was at Pike Place Market, browsing flowers, when my phone buzzed with an automated alert. Memory leak in the payment processing service. It's not my problem anymore, but old habits die hard. I found a coffee shop and pulled up the public status page. Still green, but I knew better. The leak was in a section of code that interfaced with one of my libraries. The junior dev who'd cleaned it up had removed what looked like redundant object cleanup, except it wasn't redundant. It was handling edge cases in the third-party payment API that only surfaced under specific conditions. By the time they noticed, 3 hours had passed. The service was consuming 80 gigabytes of RAM and climbing. In the old days, I'd have spotted it in minutes, fixed it in 10. Now, I sipped my latte and watched their response time metrics crater. They got it under control eventually, rolled back the change, restarted the service. But the damage was done. 3 hours of degraded payment processing, probably a few thousand failed transactions, the kind of thing that made CFOs ask uncomfortable questions. That evening, Tara called. "You see the news?" "What news?" "Argentum's having issues." Stock dipped 2% on reports of payment processing problems. "Unfortunate," I said, stirring pasta on the stove. "Hung? You wouldn't know anything about that. I'm unemployed, remember? Just enjoying my severance? What severance? You said they walked you out? Exactly. She laughed. You're enjoying this too much. I'm enjoying it exactly the right amount. But the payment incident was just the appetizer. The main course came the following week during their monthly release cycle. I'd built their CI/CD pipeline 3 years ago. A complex orchestration of build servers, test environments, and deployment strategies. It was ugly, full of workarounds and special cases, but it handled their polyglot architecture with minimal downtime. Logan, apparently, had ordered a streamlined deployment process. I watched it unfold like a slow-motion car crash. They'd replaced my custom deployment scripts with off-trust solutions, clean and modern and completely unsuited to Argentum's reality. The first deployment went fine, a simple front-end update. Second, touching multiple services began to show cracks. Service A deployed successfully, but expected Service B's new API, which was still deploying. Service B couldn't start because Service C's database migrations hadn't completed. Service C was waiting for Service A to release a lock. Circular dependency, deadlock, the entire platform grinding to a halt. In my apartment, I poured a glass of wine and pulled up my camping chair on the balcony. Seattle's skyline glittered in the distance. Argentum's tower lit up like a beacon. I imagined the war room scene, Logan pacing, engineers frantically debugging, pizza boxes piling up as the hours stretched on. They'd fix it eventually, roll back, untangle the mess. Implement better deployment ordering, but not before hours of downtime. Not before enterprise customers started calling their account managers. Not before the board started asking why their new CTO's modernization efforts were causing more problems than they solved. My phone rang, a known number, but I recognized Argentum's corporate prefix. Hello, Nina, a familiar voice. Marcus, one of the senior engineers. We'd worked together for 5 years. Hey, I know this is awkward, but we're having some issues. With the deployment pipeline, I'm sorry to hear that, I said, watching a ferry cross the sound. Look, I know Logan let you go, but we're in a bad spot. The new deployment system is locked up and we can't figure out why.
Odd.
Could you maybe, Marcus? I interrupted gently. I don't work there anymore. I know. But maybe just some guidance. Point us in the right direction. I felt for him. I really did. Marcus was a good engineer, hamstringed by management decisions he couldn't control. But sympathy didn't pay bills or restore faith. Check the service dependency graph, I said finally. Look for cycles. And Marcus, next time Logan decides to fix something that isn't broken, remember this moment. Nina, I hung up. By morning, they'd resolved the deployment crisis, but the damage was spreading. Tech blogs picked up the story. Argentum Dynamics suffers second major outage in 2 weeks. The stock price dipped another %. LinkedIn lit up with recruiters sensing blood in the water, circling Argentum's talent pool. Tara called that afternoon. I finished reviewing your documentation. This is airtight. Your licenses are clear, their usage is documented, the terms are enforceable. Good. When do you want to pull the trigger? I thought about it. Part of me wanted to wait longer, let them dig deeper. While they were vulnerable Monday, I said. Give them the weekend to think they've stabilized. Cold, calculated. There's a difference. I spent the weekend preparing, not the legal documents. Tara had those handled. I prepared myself. Once we sent the demand letter, there was no going back. 8 years of relationships gone. Any chance of a reference destroyed. But then I thought about Logan's smile as he denied my reimbursement, the security guard escorting me out like a criminal, the $500 they thought was worth more than my expertise. Sunday night, I sat at my computer and composed an email to Tara. Short, simple, send it. Monday morning arrived, gray and drizzling, Seattle at its most stereotypical. I made coffee and settled in to watch the show. The demand letter would hit their legal department at 9 a.m. sharp, right as everyone was settling in for the week. I didn't have access to their internal communications anymore, but I could imagine the chain reaction. Legal would read it, panic, forward to the C-suite. Logan would dismiss it as frivolous until someone technical reviewed the claims. Then the real panic would begin as they realized how deeply my code was embedded in their infrastructure. At 10:47 a.m., my phone rang, Argentum's corporate number. Again, hello. Please hold for Logan Prince, I smiled, faster than expected. Nina. His voice had lost that polished confidence. I just received a rather alarming letter from your attorney. Then you should probably have your attorney contact mine. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. I'm sure we can resolve this reasonably. Could have. You chose not to when you terminated me over a legitimate business expense. That's a separate issue. This claim for $2.4 million is based on 3 years of documented commercial use of my proprietary code. The licensing terms are clear. You developed that code while employed by us. On my personal time, using my personal equipment, explicitly retaining ownership. Would you like me to forward the email where your predecessor acknowledged this arrangement? Silence. I could practically hear him grinding his teeth. This is extortion, he said finally. This is contract law. You've been using my software commercially without a license? The invoice reflects usage to date. Of course, if you'd prefer to cease using my code immediately, we can't do that. Then I suggest you have your legal team review the licensing terms and prepare payment. Nina, be reasonable. The company can't just write a check for $2 million. Should have thought of that before you saved $500 on my reimbursement. I hung up. The rest of the morning was quiet. I knew the storm was brewing in Argentum's tower. Emergency meetings. Frantic code reviews. Desperate searches for alternatives. But outwardly, they maintained silence. That changed after lunch. Marcus texted, "Holy shit, Nina. Logan's losing his mind. He's ordered us to strip out all your code by end of week." I didn't respond, but I watched my telemetry dashboard with interest. Usage of my libraries actually increased as they spun up additional instances trying to understand dependencies, like scratching a rash. The more they touched it, the worse. It got by Tuesday. The situation had escalated. Tara forwarded me an email from Argentum's legal team disputing our claims, arguing that work-for-hire superseded any personal licensing, typical corporate intimidation tactics. "How do you want to respond?" she asked. "Send them the full audit trail, every commit from my personal laptop, every timestamp showing weekend and evening work?" Tara. "Include the Slack messages where their engineers explicitly discuss using my personal projects to solve company problems. That'll shut them up. That's the idea." Wednesday brought the first public consequences. A junior developer, frustrated and overworked, accidentally pushed internal documentation to a public repo. Nothing sensitive, but it included architecture. Diagrams showing how deeply my libraries were integrated into their systems. Tech Twitter had a field day. Argentum Dynamics built on engineers' personal projects trended briefly. The stock price, already wobbly, dropped another 3%. Logan called again that evening. I let it go to voicemail. "Nina, this is Logan. We need to talk. The board is concerned about the situation. I'm sure we can find a mutually beneficial resolution. Call me back." I deleted the message and poured another glass of wine. Thursday was when things got interesting. I woke to find my GitHub repos swarmed with traffic, not from Argentum, but from their competitors. Word had gotten out about the licensing dispute, and suddenly everyone wanted to see what code was worth $2 million. My inbox filled with inquiries, startups wanting to license the libraries, recruiters dangling senior architect positions, even a few acquisition offers for the IP itself. I forwarded the best ones to Tara. "Might be useful for negotiation." "You're evil," she replied. "I love it." But the real entertainment came from watching Argentum's attempts to extricate themselves. Their engineering team had split into two camps. One trying to reverse engineer my libraries, the other attempting to find replacements. Both were failing spectacularly. The reverse engineering hit wall after wall. Gosh. My code wasn't deliberately obfuscated, but it was the product of years of evolution, optimized for their specific use cases. Without understanding the why behind each decision, they couldn't replicate the what. The replacement effort was even more comedic. Off-the-shelf solutions existed for some functions, but none handled Argentum's peculiar requirements. Their architecture had grown around my code like a tree around a fence. Removing it meant restructuring everything. Friday morning, Tara called early. They blinked. A full payment of the invoice plus interest plus legal fees. But they want an ongoing license in your agreement not to publicize the settlement. No, nah. They pay the invoice. That covers past usage. If they want future usage, that's a separate negotiation. And I make no promises about publicity beyond not violating any legal agreements. That's harsh. That's business. They taught me that, remember? She sighed. I'll counter. This is going to get uglier before it's done. She was right. Next week saw Argentum's public situation deteriorate further. The deployment issues continued without my libraries. Their CI/CD pipeline was held together with digital prayer. A botched update took down their customer portal for 6 hours. Board called an emergency meeting. I knew because Rebecca, an old colleague from finance, texted me, "Logan's in with the board. He looks like he's about to cry." I felt a twinge of sympathy almost. Then I remembered him standing over my desk, smiling as he ended my career over. $500. The next morning, everything changed. Tara called at 7 a.m., excitement crackling through the phone. They caved. Full payment, no conditions on publicity, and they want to negotiate an ongoing license. How much? The full $2.4 million, plus another $50,000 in legal fees. I sat down heavily. It was real. It's a number I'd calculated, the justice I'd planned. It was happening. Nina, you there? I'm here. Just ... processing. There's more. They want to meet in person to discuss ongoing licensing. Logan. No, the board fired Logan last night, effective immediately. I closed my eyes. Victory should have tasted sweeter, but mostly I felt tired. Vindicated, but tired. Set up the meeting, I said. But Tara, make it clear I'm not coming back as an employee. If they want my code, they license it like any other vendor. Understood, Nina. You did it. You won. Had I? I'd gotten paid, gotten justice, gotten revenge. Thought I'd also burn my professional home to the ground in the process. Yeah, I said quietly. I won. The meeting was scheduled for the following Tuesday. I dressed carefully, professional but not corporate, confident but not aggressive. The same building I'd been escorted from weeks ago now welcomed me as a valued partner. The conference room was packed. Board members, the interim CTO, legal counsel, even the CEO dialing in from New York. They needed my code, and everyone knew it. Ms. Ward, the board chair, began. Thank you for meeting with us. We'd like to discuss a long-term arrangement. I listened to their proposal. Annual licensing. Fee. Support contract. Even a consulting arrangement to help train their team. The numbers were generous. They'd learn the cost of undervaluing expertise. I appreciate the offer, I said when they finished, but I have concerns about Argentum's technical direction. You fired me for writing code that worked in favor of code that looked pretty. Why should I believe that's changed? The interim CTO leaned forward. Because we've learned that lesson painfully. We need stability, not aesthetics. And the $500? The board chair actually smiled. We've reviewed that situation. The reimbursement has been approved with interest, and we've updated our procurement policies to prevent such short-sighted decisions. I considered it. The money was good, the vindication complete, but something still nagged at me. I need one more thing, I said. A public statement acknowledging that Argentum's infrastructure was built on open-source contributions from its engineers. That innovation comes from empowering developers, not constraining them. They exchanged glances. The CEO cleared his throat over the speakerphone. That's unusual. So's firing someone over a $500 expense they incurred to keep your systems running, take it or leave it. Took them less than 5 minutes to agree. I signed the licensing agreement that afternoon, annual fee of $400,000 for unlimited use of my libraries, plus hourly consulting as needed. The public statement went out the next day. Carefully worded but clear in its message, Argentum valued its engineers and their contributions, both official and personal. Logan Prince's departure was announced separately, buried in a Friday afternoon. Press release. Pursuing other opportunities. The standard corporate fiction. The tech community connected the dots anyway. A month later, I sat in my new office. A co-working space overlooking the Sound, reviewing pull requests for my now officially commercial libraries. The Argentum incident had turned me into an accidental entrepreneur. Dozens of companies wanted what I'd built, and I was happy to license it to them. My phone buzzed. A LinkedIn notification. Logan Prince had updated his status, Chief Technology Officer at Metacore Solutions. I laughed. Was one of my new clients, already integrating my libraries into their infrastructure. I made a note to send them a particularly thorough invoice. Rebecca from Argentum texted. Saw Logan's new role? Did you know? I know everything, I replied, evil prepared. There's a difference. Turned back to my code, clean, functional, and valued at exactly what it was worth. Outside, Seattle's rain had broken, sun streaming through the clouds. My succulent thrived on the windowsill, patient and resilient as ever. They'd thought $500 could bury me. Instead, it had set me free. 2 years have passed since that morning in Logan's office. Argent Dynamics remains a client, one of my best. Actually, their new CTO, promoted from within, someone who understands code over cosmetics, sends me holiday cards. We've developed an excellent working relationship built on mutual respect and clearly defined contracts. My library licensing business has grown beyond what I imagined. 23 companies now pay for commercial usage, and I employ 2 developers to help with maintenance and support. We work remotely, set our own hours, and never quibble over expense reports. Logan Prince lasted 6 months at Metacore. When their system started experiencing familiar problems, they called me for consultation. I explained, quite professionally, that certain architectural decisions seemed to be causing instability. They thanked me, paid my consulting fee, and Logan's tenure ended shortly after. I hear he's teaching now, business school, focusing on technical leadership for non-technical executives. I hope his students learn from his mistakes, though I doubt he frames them that way. Tara and I still meet for coffee monthly. She's built her own practice specializing in intellectual property for engineers. You started something, she told me recently. Developers are getting smarter about protecting their work. I said, it's about time. The $500 monitoring tool still runs in my infrastructure, now monitoring dozens of client systems. It's generated hundreds of thousands in value, preventing outages and catching issues before they cascade. I keep the original invoice framed in my office denied, stamped and read as a reminder. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if Logan had simply approved that reimbursement. Would I still be at Argentum, maintaining their systems in grateful silence? Would I have ever realized the value of what I'd built? Probably not. Comfort breeds complacency, and I'd been comfortable for too long. It took being pushed off the cliff to discover I could fly. My phone buzzes. A potential client. A startup that's heard about my libraries. They want to discuss licensing, maybe some consulting work. I check their leadership team. No Logan Prince, no Harvard MBAs, with big ideas about modernization. I'd be happy to meet, I type back. Let's discuss how I can help you build something that actually works, because in the end, that's what it was always about. Not the money, though the money was nice. Not the revenge, though the revenge was satisfying. It was about the work itself, solving problems, building systems, creating something elegant and functional and enduring. They thought they were saving $500. What they bought was my freedom to do what I do best, on my own terms and my own price. And that, as Logan might say, if he'd learned anything, is just good business. The rain has started again, drumming against my office window in that familiar Seattle rhythm. I turn back to my code, fingers finding their rhythm on the keyboard. Somewhere out there in server rooms and data centers, my libraries run their quiet magic, processing payments, routing messages, keeping the digital world spinning, all because someone thought $500 was worth more than the person who kept their lights on. Their mistake, my fortune, and the best part? This isn't even the ending. It's just the beginning of what happens when you teach an engineer the true value of their work. The code keeps running, invoices keep coming, and somewhere in a business school classroom, a former CTO teaches future executives about the importance of strategic technical investment. I hope he mentions the $500. I hope he explains how such a small decision can cascade into millions in losses. How treating your engineers as expenses rather than assets can bring down entire infrastructures.
Oh.
But mostly, I hope his students are smarter than he was, because out here in the real world where code meets commerce, we're done being undervalued. We know what we're worth now. We're not afraid to send the invoice. The succulent on my windowsill has grown, sprouted offspring, that I've potted and given to clients. A small reminder that good things grow when properly tended, that patience and resilience pay off in the end. My latest commit pushes successfully. Another improvement to the libraries that started all this: clean code, functional code, valuable code. The Git history shows my name, my timestamp, my copyright clear and indisputable. I close my laptop and stretch, ready to call it a day. Tomorrow, there will be more code to write, more problems to solve, more value to create. But tonight, I'll go home to my apartment, pour a glass of wine, and watch the city lights twinkle in the rain. They axed me over $500. My revenge cost them $12 million. But my freedom, that's priceless.